I should have known. It wasn't like this was the first time. But I let myself believe things were different now. That maybe, just maybe, my family had finally found it in their hearts to include me. So when my mother texted me the night before saying she wasn't feeling well and needed to cancel the dinner, I didn't question it. Sorry, honey, I'm just too sick to host this year. Maybe we can do something later? I even replied with concern. Hope you feel better, Mom. Let me know if you need anything. I meant it. And now I feel like an idiot. The morning starts like any other. Coffee, mindless scrolling through my phone. I don't know what makes me open Instagram. Maybe boredom, maybe habit. And then I see it, a photo. There they are, my mother, my father, my sister Emily, and a handful of family friends, all gathered around a perfectly set dining table. Candles flickering, crystal wine glasses raised in a toast, a birthday cake in the center, my mother smiling as she prepares to blow out the candles. A lump forms in my throat. I scroll down. The caption reads, "Such a beautiful night with family. Happy birthday, Margaret." I blink, trying to make sense of what I'm seeing. I refresh the page, half expecting it to disappear, but the image stays. The comments flood in. So lovely. Looks like a wonderful evening. Your family is perfect. Happy birthday, Margaret. My stomach tightens. I grip my phone, my pulse hammering in my ears. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was deliberate. A tightness wraps around my chest, anger and humiliation swirling into something too bitter to swallow. I stare at the picture again, at the way Emily is practically glowing in the candlelight, leaning into my mother's side like the golden child she's always been. My absence isn't an accident. It's an omission. A carefully crafted edit. They didn't forget me. They chose to leave me out. I press the call button before I can think twice. My mother answers on the second ring, her voice calm, casual, like she hasn't just been caught. "Lauren, how are you, sweetie?" I grip the phone tighter. "You canceled dinner." A pause, barely a fraction of a second, but I catch it. "Oh, honey, I told you I wasn't feeling well." "Right." I force out a breath, trying to steady my voice. "You didn't look too sick in the pictures." There's silence, then a soft, drawn-out sigh, like I'm the one making things difficult. "Lauren, don't do this." "Do what? Ask why you lied to me?" My voice rises, shaking with something between rage and disbelief. "Sweetheart, you always read too much into things. We didn't mean anything by it. You know how you can be." There it is, the gaslighting, the subtle, practiced way she twists the knife while making me feel like I'm the one holding it. I close my eyes, trying to push down the familiar wave of hurt. "You could have just told me," I say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, Lauren," she sighs again. "You always overreact." My fingers tighten around my phone. Overreact. Like I'm a child throwing a tantrum. Like I haven't just uncovered yet another reminder of how little I matter to them. I swallow hard. My mind is spinning, the sting of betrayal burning in my chest. This isn't just about a dinner. Something nags at me, a deeper, uglier thought curling in the pit of my stomach. What else have they hidden from me? I don't know the answer yet, but I'm about to find out. I needed to talk to someone who wouldn't make me feel crazy. Rachel Martinez wasn't just an old family friend. She was one of the few people who saw through my parents' polished veneer years ago. She used to be close to Emily, back when they were in college, before she suddenly distanced herself from our family. I never knew why, until now. I meet her at a small cafe on the west side of town, a place I used to go to with her years ago, back when I still believed my family had my back. The warm scent of roasted coffee beans fills the air, but I can't enjoy it. My mind is too tangled in last night's conversation with my mother, the same scripted gaslighting, the same tight-lipped dismissal. You always overreact. Rachel arrives a few minutes late, wearing a navy coat and a serious expression. She doesn't offer a casual greeting, just a nod before sliding into the seat across from me. Her eyes, dark, calculating, scan my face as if deciding how much she should say. I don't waste time. "Did you know they left me out of my mom's birthday dinner?" Rachel exhales, shaking her head. Not surprised. I grip my coffee cup, staring at the dark liquid inside. I don't know why I even let it get to me anymore. She watches me carefully, then leans forward. "Lauren, there's something you should know." Something in her tone shifts the air around us. I set my cup down, my heart beginning to drum against my ribs. "What?" Rachel hesitates. The cafe hums around us, spoons clinking against porcelain, muted conversations, the low hiss of the espresso machine, but all of it fades as she presses forward. Your grandfather left you a trust. The words barely register. I frown. What? She grips her hands together. He left you an inheritance, $300,000. My breath catches. That's not true. You never got it. Her voice is steady but cold, her eyes sharp, because your father did. A slow, sickening realization unfurls inside me. Rachel sighs. Lauren, he was in charge of it, and at some point she swallows. He transferred it all to Emily. I can't breathe. My fingers dig into the table. No, I shake my head, trying to grasp onto something solid. That doesn't make sense. My grandfather wouldn't have let that happen. He wouldn't have, Rachel agrees. But he died before you turned 18, and after that it was just your parents handling the paperwork. A crushing weight presses down on my chest. All these years, all the times I struggled, the student loans, the extra shifts, the nights I worked late, exhausted, scraping by while Emily lived like a goddamn princess. That money was mine. I push my chair back, suddenly feeling like I need air, like the cafe is closing in on me. My hands tremble as I press them against the table. How do you know this? Rachel exhales. Because I saw some of the documents years ago. Back when I was still around your family, I knew something was off, but I didn't know the full story. Not until later. I look at her, my vision blurring. And you never told me? I thought you knew. Her voice drops, guilt slipping in. Or that you agreed to it. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Agreed? Rachel hesitates, then bites her lip. There was a time, I remember your father having you sign something when we were younger. I don't know if it was related, but you didn't question it. Just signed. I close my eyes, memories stirring like a cold wind through my mind. I remember signing things. My father had always been so casual about it. Just paperwork, sweetheart. Routine stuff. Here, sign at the bottom. My stomach turns violently. Was that it? Was that when I signed away my own future without even knowing it? I push away from the table and stand up. My limbs feel foreign, as if they belong to someone else. Rachel looks up at me, concern knitting her brow. Lauren, I need to go. My voice comes out hollow, detached. She doesn't try to stop me. As I walk out of the cafe, the cold air slams into me, but I barely feel it. My mind is too full. My heart is too empty. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I know this. I will find the truth. And when I do, they will regret ever thinking I wouldn't. I haven't slept. I spent the entire night at my desk, laptop open, eyes burning as I dug through years of financial records. This is what I do. Numbers don't lie. People do. The documents weren't easy to find. My father, always meticulous, always careful, buried them under layers of transactions, shifting funds across accounts like a magician hiding a coin. But he underestimated me. He always has. Now, as the morning light filters through my blinds, I sit frozen, staring at my screen. It's worse than I imagined. Transfers from my grandfather's estate, sent through multiple accounts, all leading to Emily. Over $300,000 drained from what should have been mine. The family property, the one my grandfather left to be split between us, sold without my knowledge. The deed was signed, dated, finalized years ago. My signature was on it. But it's too perfect, too smooth. I zoom in, my stomach twisting. It's not mine, or at least, not one I remember signing. My fingers tighten around the edge of my desk. Did he forge it? Or worse, did he manipulate me into signing something I didn't understand? Memories start creeping in. I was 20 at the time, home from college for the summer. My father had handed me a stack of documents one evening, his tone casual. Just routine paperwork, sweetheart. Here, sign at the bottom. I didn't question it, I never did. I was trained to trust. I force out a shaky breath and shut my laptop. My hands are cold, my pulse hammering in my ears. This isn't just about money anymore. It's about every single lie they've told me. Every dismissive glance, every eye roll when I voiced concerns. Every time they made me feel like I was the problem. I grab my phone and scroll through my contacts. I haven't spoken to him in years, but his name is still there. Daniel Foster, attorney at law. I press call. An hour later, Daniel's office is exactly what I expected. Sleek, minimalist, cold. I sit across from him in a stiff leather chair, my back straight, my documents spread across his desk like a crime scene. He flips through the files, his brow furrowed. The silence stretches, thick and heavy. Then he exhales, looking up. You were manipulated. His words feel like a gavel striking a table. I swallow. Legally, can I fight this? He leans back, tapping his pen against the desk. It's complicated. The statute of limitations on fraud varies. If we can prove they deliberately misled you, forced your signature, or withheld your rightful inheritance, we have a case. I nod, but my mind is spinning. I should feel relieved. I should feel validated. Instead, all I can think about is every time I let myself believe they were my family, that they cared. They didn't just steal from me, they erased me. Daniel's voice pulls me back. Lauren, I need to ask. If we go through with this, it's going to get ugly. Are you ready for that? I stare at the documents, my past laid bare in black and white. I think about my mother's sigh, my father's patronizing voice, Emily's smirk. I picture them sitting in that warm, candlelit dining room without me, toasting to my absence. I lift my head and meet his gaze. I'm ready. The air in the restaurant is thick with artificial warmth, the kind that lingers in expensive places meant to make people feel at ease. White linen tablecloths, dim golden lighting, a faint hum of piano music in the background. I chose this place deliberately. Neutral ground, public enough that no one would dare make a scene. I sit at a corner table, my fingers resting lightly against the edge of a thick leather folder. My heart isn't racing. My hands aren't shaking. There's only a cold steadiness inside me, the kind of quiet before a storm. Then they arrive. My father walks in first, crisp in his usual dark blazer, his silver hair combed back with precision. His eyes flick around the restaurant, as if expecting some kind of trap. My mother follows, draped in one of her signature cream-colored coats, the kind that makes her look effortlessly elegant. Her expression is unreadable, but there's tension in her mouth, a tightness in her jaw. Emily comes last, high heels clicking against the floor, perfectly styled waves cascading over her shoulders, a small smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. She's the only one who seems amused. I stand as they reach the table, offering a polite, neutral smile. Mom, Dad, Emily. A pause, a beat too long. Then my mother forces a smile. Lauren, what's this about? I gesture to the chairs. Sit, they do. Emily crosses her legs, leaning back in her seat, eyes flicking over me like she's trying to decide whether this is entertainment or a waste of her time. My father folds his arms. My mother smooths out her napkin as if this is just another lunch date. I let the silence stretch, let them feel it. Then I slide the folder across the table, a thick, satisfying thud. Emily raises an eyebrow, but she's the first to reach for it. She flips it open carelessly, scanning the pages. My father leans forward, eyes narrowing as he recognizes the documents. My mother doesn't touch it. She simply stares at me. I fold my hands together, my voice even. Return what you stole, or I take this to the police. Silence. Then Emily lets out a short laugh, shaking her head. You've really been busy, haven't you? My father exhales through his nose, his jaw tightening. Lauren. I cut him off. $300,000. I keep my tone level, clinical. Fraudulent property transfers, manipulated trust accounts. I lean forward. Forgery. My mother sighs, a long, drawn-out sound like I'm exhausting her. Lauren, honey, you always do this, blowing things out of proportion. My fingers twitch against the tablecloth. Always do this, as if I'm the one with a pattern of behavior, as if I'm the problem. I keep my expression neutral. Is that what we're going with? My father shakes his head, leaning back in his chair, his face hardening into something colder. More calculated. And what do you think you'll accomplish? His voice is low, measured. Ruining your own family? Destroying your parents? There it is, the shift, the tactic they always use. You're the problem, Lauren. You're the one tearing us apart. I stare at him, my heart thudding steadily in my chest. I think, I say slowly, I'd like to hear you admit what you did. Emily closes the folder with a soft snap, smiling as she tilts her head. Go ahead, she says, her voice sickly sweet. Nobody's going to believe you over us. I look at her, really look at her. The careless confidence, the unwavering entitlement. She has no idea what's coming. I reach into my coat pocket and place my phone face up on the table. I press play. The audio fills the space between us. My father's voice, just sign it, sweetheart. It's just routine paperwork. My mother, she'll never know, Richard. She doesn't pay attention to these things. Emily laughing softly. Lauren's so easy to fool, it's almost sad. The color drains from my mother's face. My father stiffens. Emily's smile finally falters. I lean back in my chair, tilting my head slightly, watching the realization sink in. My voice is calm when I say, I think they will. I always thought revenge would feel bigger, louder, more satisfying. But as I sit in my car, watching the suited officers step into my father's office building, I don't feel the rush of victory I expected. I feel cold. The sky is a dull shade of gray, thick clouds pressing low over the city. The air smells like impending rain. I watch through the windshield as the glass doors swing open again. 2 uniformed officers emerge, and between them, my father. His hands are cuffed, his normally pristine blazer is rumpled, his expression carefully composed, but I see the tension in his jaw, the rigid set of his shoulders. He isn't speaking, isn't struggling, just walking in controlled, calculated steps as if that will somehow preserve his dignity. There are cameras, a few reporters. They know who he is. This isn't just some mistake that can be swept under the rug. This is a scandal. I feel nothing. Margaret Carter's social downfall. 2 days later, my mother hosts a charity event at the country club. It's the kind of thing she thrives in. White-gloved hands, forced laughter, tight smiles between glasses of imported wine. Except this time, the whispers are louder than the music. I don't have to be there to hear them. Did you hear about Richard Carter? Arrested in his own office. Imagine the humiliation. And the daughter, Lauren, the accountant? She's the one who filed the charges. What kind of mother raises a child who would do that? My mother has spent decades curating her reputation. The gracious wife of a respected businessman, the perfect mother to an accomplished daughter. Now it's unraveling thread by thread. By the end of the night, several longtime friends have distanced themselves, invitations rescinded, social ties severed, her foundation is cracking. Emily's empire crumbles. Emily doesn't call me, not directly. Instead, I get a string of text messages from a number I don't recognize. Unknown. What the f*** did you do? They're freezing my accounts. My accounts. Do you even understand what you've done? Are you really that jealous of me? Answer me. I don't reply. I already know what happened. Her entire business was built on stolen money, fraudulent investments. She never questioned where the luxury came from, because she never had to. She assumed it would always be there, that Daddy would always provide. Now her company accounts are under investigation, assets frozen, lawsuits incoming. I picture her in her sleek, glass-walled office, watching everything slip through her fingers, and still, the only thing she can think about is me. Not the years of lies, not the theft. Me, the extended family's sudden interest. The moment my father's arrest hits the news, I start getting calls. Aunts, uncles, cousins who barely spoke to me growing up. Lauren, sweetheart, why didn't you come to us first? We could have handled this privately. This is just shocking. We had no idea. You're still family. We should talk. I let every call go to voicemail. Where were they when I needed them? When I was being lied to, manipulated, made to feel like an outsider in my own bloodline? Now that the truth is out, now that they can see the damage, they suddenly want to mend things? No, I don't need them. I never did. Watching it all burn, I sit alone in my apartment, curled up in the corner of my couch, watching the news play on silent. The screen shows my father being escorted into the courthouse. Then a clip of my mother at the charity event, her expression tight and unreadable. Then a grainy image of Emily walking briskly through a parking garage, oversized sunglasses shielding her face from the cameras. A part of me expected to feel triumphant, victorious. Instead, there's just a quiet, sinking emptiness. I didn't do this to destroy them. I did this to take back what was mine. And yet, I can't shake the feeling that in winning I've lost something too. Something I can never get back. I stare at the screen until the images blur, the news anchor's voice fading into static. The first domino has fallen, and there's no stopping the rest. The calls start early. My phone buzzes against the nightstand before the sun even rises. The vibrations hum against the wood, a quiet, persistent demand for attention. I don't answer. Not the first time. Not the second. But by the third, I know they aren't going to stop. I stare at the screen. Mom. For a moment, I debate letting it ring out again, letting her words sink into nothing but silence. Then with a steadying breath, I swipe to answer. I don't say anything. There's a pause on the other end, just the faint, shaky inhale of my mother's breath. Then, you don't know what you're doing. Her voice wavers, but it isn't with sadness. It's with fear. She never thought it would come to this. Never thought I'd push back hard enough to shake the ground beneath her feet. I close my eyes. I know exactly what I'm doing. There's a sharp inhale, like she's trying to steady herself. Lauren, she says, softer now, we're family. You don't do this to your own blood. I almost laugh at the irony. Instead, I keep my voice steady. You did it first. Her breath hitches. Just barely. But before she can recover, before she can spin this into another plea wrapped in guilt, I say, "Goodbye, Mom," and I hang up. Emily's breakdown. The next call comes in minutes later, a different name on the screen. Emily. I debate letting it ring, letting her stew in whatever version of reality she's convinced herself is true. But I answer. There's no hesitation on her end, no silence, just a breathless, angry voice bursting through the speaker. You destroyed us. I don't respond. You think this is justice? She seethes. You think you're some kind of hero? Do you even know what you've done? I tilt my head, watching the city lights flicker beyond my window. Enlighten me. You ruined Mom. You ruined Dad. Me. Her voice cracks, but it isn't sadness. It's rage. I don't have access to my accounts. My business is built on stolen money, I finish. Silence. For the first time in our lives, Emily has no quick comeback, no smug retort. I almost feel bad for her, almost. Instead, I let the silence stretch between us, let her sit with the weight of her own downfall. Then I say, calmly, you did this to yourself. And I hang up. The last attempt. The final call comes hours later. This time, it's him. My father's voice is calm, measured. He never raises his voice, never allows emotion to stain his words. I always knew you'd turn on us. No preamble, no hesitation, just that single, cold statement, like it was inevitable, like I was the traitor. I exhale slowly. I didn't turn on you. A pause. Then in a voice edged with steel, I say, you turned on me first. For the first time, he has no response, no defense, just silence. I let it linger for a moment longer, absorbing the finality of it all. Then, without another word, I press end call. Click. And then one by one, I block their numbers. Time moves forward even when you think it won't. The headlines fade. The court case, once a storm of whispers and speculation, reduces itself to a few final lines in the legal system. A plea deal. No trial, no drawn-out spectacle. Just consequences. The fall of the Carters. My parents are forced to pay restitution, their financial security crumbling like a house of cards. Decades of polished appearances and carefully cultivated wealth, gone. The home I grew up in, sold. The country club membership, revoked. My father, once the powerful figure behind financial firms, now a disgraced man whose name carries nothing but scandal. My mother, ever the society woman, can't escape the whispers. Invitations rescinded, cold glances at charity functions, the quiet exile of a woman who no longer holds any leverage. And Emily? Emily, who once draped herself in designer labels and weekend spa retreats, now stands behind a receptionist's desk, answering calls, plastering on a forced smile for strangers. She lasted 2 months before reaching out. I never answered. A New Beginning Seattle is different. The air is crisp, cleaner somehow, as if washing away the remnants of everything I left behind. My apartment is small but mine. No ghosts of the past lingering in its corners. No memories tainting the walls. I wake up without tension in my chest. I go to work. I meet new people. I learn to enjoy silence without waiting for the next betrayal. And then, one day, Rachel visits. We sit in a quiet cafe, sunlight streaming through the windows, and she reaches into her bag, pulling out something wrapped in an old cloth. A photo album. I frown as I take it, my fingers brushing over the worn leather cover. What is this? Rachel exhales softly. Your grandfather left it behind. I found it in some old things my mom kept. My chest tightens as I open it. The photos are faded but familiar. Me as a child, standing by my grandfather's side, his hand resting on my shoulder. Old birthdays, holidays, moments I barely remember. And then tucked between 2 pages, a folded letter. I stare at it for a long time before carefully pulling it out. The paper is yellowed with time, the ink slightly smudged. Rachel watches me as I unfold it. The words are simple. Lauren, you were always the strongest. Never let them make you believe otherwise. My breath catches. I don't even realize the tears are falling until they drip onto the page, smudging the ink slightly. But for the first time in my life, they aren't from sadness, they're from release. I press the letter to my chest, my eyes closing for a long, steady breath. For the first time, I feel free. The city stretches out before me, endless and alive. Seattle hums beneath me, cars moving like veins of light, people walking hurriedly along sidewalks, the distant echo of a street musician playing something soft and melancholic. From my apartment window, the skyline glows against the early morning haze, a quiet promise of something new. I exhale, pressing my palm against the cool glass. I'm not the same woman I was a year ago. A year ago, I was waiting for them to see me, to acknowledge me, to love me the way I had loved them, despite everything. A year ago, I would have let my mother's sighs, my father's dismissiveness, and Emily's smug little smirks chip away at me, at who I was, at what I was worth. Not anymore. The photo album rests on the kitchen counter, its leather worn, its pages filled with memories both warm and painful. The letter from my grandfather is still tucked inside, folded neatly, his words imprinted in my mind. You were always the strongest. Never let them make you believe otherwise. I let out a slow breath and closed the album. The best revenge wasn't watching them fall. It was rising without them. I grab my coat, slipping it over my shoulders as I head toward the door. The morning air is crisp when I step outside, biting against my skin, but it only makes me feel more awake, more alive. For the first time in my life, I'm not running from anything. I'm walking forward. And I don't look back.